For centuries, the Great Wall stood as the Ming dynasty's greatest and most formidable defence against northern invaders. But walls alone could not protect an empire. That task fell to ordinary soldiers stationed along this remote frontier, men who endured brutal conditions and constant danger in devoted service to the wall. This is the remarkable story of their daily lives. The night watch was among the most demanding and exhausting duties a frontier soldier could draw. Stationed alone or in pairs atop isolated watchtowers, these dedicated men served as the Empire's first and most crucial line of warning against sudden Mongol raids. They scanned the darkness for hours on end, watching intently for any flicker of movement across the vast open steppe, stretching endlessly northward into hostile territory beyond the Empire's protective reach. Winter nights at these exposed mountain elevations dropped well below freezing. Soldiers wrapped themselves in multiple layers of padded, cotton armour, but the bitter cold still seeped relentlessly through the fabric. Brief trips inside to warm numb hands over a glowing charcoal brazier offered the only real relief, yet watchmen could never linger too long at the fire. Leaving the parapet unattended risked death not only for themselves but for every garrison stationed along the wall. Watch shifts typically lasted around 2 hours before a relief soldier climbed up to take over the position. The exchange happened quickly and silently in the freezing darkness. Speaking was entirely unnecessary. Every soldier understood the routine intimately through years of constant repetition and drilling. With his shift finally complete, a soldier faced a long descent down the tower ladder and a cold walk through the frozen garrison compound to reach the welcoming barracks and its heated brick sleeping platform called the Kang. Sleep was a precious commodity for Great Wall soldiers, measured not in hours but in brief intervals stolen between demanding duties. A man coming off the night watch might manage only an hour or two of rest before the wooden clapper sounded, summoning everyone to rise for the long day ahead. The heated Kang platform offered welcome warmth but little real comfort, and exhaustion was simply a constant companion to be endured without complaint. The morning routine followed a strict and unvarying sequence throughout the garrison. Soldiers filed into the courtyard while darkness still clung to the compound, splashing icy water on their faces to shake off the fog of sleep. Dressing for duty was a methodical process. Layered cotton armour designed to stop arrows and retain precious body heat, leg bindings wrapped tight for long hours of marching, and iron helmets secured firmly beneath the chin. Breakfast was simple and purely functional. Millet porridge formed the backbone of a frontier. Soldiers' diet, sometimes supplemented with pickled vegetables or salted meat when supplies permitted. Men ate standing in the courtyard, consuming their rations quickly before the day's duties commenced. There was no lingering over meals at a remote Great Wall garrison outpost. With the sun cresting the eastern mountains, soldiers assembled for morning formation and official inspection. This daily ritual served multiple purposes beyond simple military discipline. Officers checked weapons for proper maintenance, armour for damage, and men for signs of illness or injury that might compromise the garrison's overall defensive readiness. A single weak link could prove catastrophic if raiders struck unexpectedly. The commanding officer moved through the ranks with practiced authority, his experienced eyes missing nothing, as he carefully evaluated every soldier under his command. The morning inspection was more than military ritual. It was survival. Officers examined every weapon for sharpness and integrity, knowing that a corroded spear or cracked shaft could mean death. Soldiers who failed to maintain their equipment faced punishment, but more importantly, they risked their own lives and those of their fellow garrison members when raiders attacked without warning. Once inspection concluded, the commanding officer issued the day's assignments. Wall patrol was among the most important regular duties, requiring soldiers to walk designated sections of the fortification throughout daylight hours. These patrols served multiple purposes: watching for enemy movement, checking the wall's structural condition, and maintaining a military presence that might deter opportunistic raiders from attempting a crossing. The Great Wall was not a single continuous structure, but rather a series of interconnected fortifications stretching thousands of miles across northern China. Soldiers patrolling its surface walked along broad brick pathways wide enough for cavalry to ride 5 abreast, passing watchtowers positioned at regular intervals of roughly 500 metres. Each tower served as an observation post, signal station, and defensive strongpoint. Maintaining the wall itself was an endless and demanding task. Harsh winters caused water to seep into cracks and freeze, splitting bricks and eroding the mortar that held them together. Patrol units reported damage they encountered, information that would be relayed to construction crews responsible for ongoing repairs. Without maintenance, even the mightiest fortification would eventually crumble into uselessness. The patrol pressed forward through gusting winds, the soldiers leaning into each powerful gust as they walked toward the next watchtower, where they could rest briefly before continuing their long route. Water was rationed at frontier garrisons carried up from wells or streams in the valleys below. Soldiers learned to drink sparingly, making each mouthful count during long patrols across exposed sections of the wall. Dehydration was a constant threat during summer months, while winter brought the opposite danger of water sources freezing solid and becoming inaccessible. The midday meal offered soldiers their most substantial food of the day. Millet remained the staple grain, cheap, durable and capable of being stored for months without spoiling. Vegetables were pickled in salt and vinegar to preserve them through long winters, when fresh produce was unavailable. Meat appeared rarely, usually salted pork or mutton reserved for special occasions or distributed when livestock had to be slaughtered before it could be taken by raiders. Rest periods were brief. The human body can only sustain intense physical activity for so long before exhaustion compromises both judgment and combat effectiveness. Garrison commanders understood this practical reality, building short recovery intervals into the daily schedule between morning patrol duties and afternoon training exercises. Combat drill consumed several hours each afternoon when weather permitted. The techniques practiced were not ceremonial, they were survival skills refined through generations of actual frontier warfare. The spear thrust, executed properly, could penetrate Mongol leather armour at close range. Performed incorrectly, it left a soldier overextended and vulnerable to a mounted warrior's devastating counterattack. Repetition was the key to martial effectiveness. Soldiers practiced the same movements hundreds of times until muscle memory took over completely, allowing the body to react faster than conscious thought during the chaos and terror of actual combat. The drill instructor watched every man carefully for flaws. Paired combat drills tested soldiers against live opponents rather than empty air. These exercises built practical skills, timing, distance judgment, the ability to read an enemy's movements and react appropriately. A soldier who could only perform techniques in isolation would falter when faced with an actual attacker, whose blade moved with lethal and unpredictable intent. The afternoon training sessions were deliberately exhausting. Commanders knew that real combat occurred under conditions of extreme physical stress, when muscles burned and lungs screamed for air. By pushing soldiers to their limits during training, they prepared them for the brutal reality of frontier warfare, where endurance often meant the difference between survival and death. Signal tower duty represented one of the most critical assignments in the entire defensive system. These tall structures served as the Empire's early warning network, capable of transmitting alerts across hundreds of miles in a matter of hours. When watchmen spotted approaching enemies, they ignited their beacons immediately. Neighbouring towers saw the smoke by day or flames by night, and lit their own signals in turn, creating a chain of fire that raced toward the capital far faster than any mounted messenger could possibly ride. The fuel used for signal fires was carefully chosen for maximum visibility. Wolf dung burned with thick black smoke visible for great distances during daylight hours. At night, dried straw and branches produced bright flames that could be seen from tower to tower across the darkened landscape. Soldiers on beacon duty maintained these fuel supplies constantly, knowing that a poorly prepared signal fire could cost thousands of lives. As evening approached, watchmen doubled their vigilance. Twilight raids were a favoured tactic of Mongol warriors who understood the defensive value of fading light. Evening brought the only true leisure time in a frontier soldier's demanding day, though even these precious hours were filled with necessary tasks. Men gathered around the cooking fires not merely for warmth and food, but for the brief comfort of human company after long hours of isolated duty. Conversations were subdued, voices kept low, the exhaustion of the day weighing heavily on every single man present around the crackling flames. Self-sufficiency was absolutely essential on the remote frontier outposts. Soldiers learned to mend their own clothing, repair damaged equipment, and carefully maintain their weapons without relying on specialised craftsmen, who might be hundreds of miles distant. A torn jacket left unmended could mean freezing during harsh winter patrol. A dull blade could mean sudden death when raiders finally came pouring over the hills with fire and sharpened steel in hand. The night watch rotation ensured that no soldier went without sleep entirely, though rest was always fragmented and woefully insufficient. Duty officers maintained careful records of all assignments, cycling men through watch periods, patrol duties, and precious sleep intervals with rigid efficiency. Fairness in these assignments was essential for maintaining the discipline and morale that kept a garrison functioning through months and years of isolated frontier service. Sleep came quickly to exhausted men on the heated Kang platform. They slept with weapons within arm's reach, armour folded nearby, ready to rise and fight at a moment's notice. Raider attacks could come at any hour. Indeed, striking sleeping garrisons before dawn was a favoured and brutally effective Mongol tactic. And so the cycle continued endlessly, day after day, season after season. For the soldiers of the Great Wall, this was simply life, an endless routine of watching, waiting, training, and quietly enduring.